Thank you, Prime Minister. You just spoke, it's Beth Rigby, Sky News. You just spoke about private care going into the NHS. Some people watching might be worried about backdoor privatisation of the NHS. You talked about it being a partnership. Is this then a project that you will continue until you have cleared the backlog, or is this perhaps a permanent innovation? And on Elon Musk, I do need to ask you this. He called your safeguarding minister, Jess Phillips, an evil witch, a rape genocide apologist who should be put in jail. Does that sort of abuse of a minister make you feel angry? And what is your response to that? Thank you.
Thank you, Beth. Let me address both of those. Firstly, look, an element of private sector support for the NHS has been there for a very, very long time. This is not new. And clearly we need to make best use of it. The agreement that we've signed today is to make sure we can do it better so that it's not just the sort of cherry picking of cases, it's a more comprehensive use which will allow us to get the waiting lists down. Of course the priority today is waiting lists, but I'm not ideological about this. Where there's capacity that can be used that will help us deliver in the NHS, then we will continue with that partnership. On the question of Elon Musk, look, I think most people are more interested in what's going to happen to the NHS, frankly, than what's happening on Twitter. But you asked me a really important question that's been in the news for the last few days. I am going to, with permission, just answer it quite fully because it is a really important set of issues. And let me start with this. Child sexual exploitation is utterly sickening, utterly sickening. And for many, many years, too many victims have been completely let down by perverse ideas about community relations, or by the idea that institutions must be protected above all else. And they've not been listened to and they've not been heard. And when I was chief prosecutor for 5 years, I tackled that head on because I could see what was happening. And that's why I reopened cases that had been closed and supposedly finished. I brought the first major prosecution of an Asian grooming gang. In the particular case, it was in Rochdale, but it was the first of its kind. There were many that then followed that format. I changed the whole prosecution approach because I wanted to challenge and did challenge the myths and stereotypes that were stopping those victims being heard. So we changed the entire approach, not without criticism at the time, I might add. And when I left office, we had the highest number of child sexual abuse cases being prosecuted on record. Now, that record is not secret. As a public servant, it's there for all of you or everybody to see. I also called for mandatory reporting of child sexual abuse. I called for that a decade ago. The Tories did nothing about that for those 10 long years, including when the J report came out nearly 3 years ago now. Central plank, mandatory reporting, still hasn't been done. We're going to do it. But let's just to bring it in closer, and I will answer you on Jess Phillips in particular, because those that are spreading lies and misinformation as far and as wide as possible, they're not interested in victims. They're interested in themselves. Those who are cheerleading Tommy Robinson, not interested in justice. They're supporting a man who went to prison for nearly collapsing a grooming case, a gang grooming case. These are people who are trying to get some kind of vicarious thrill from street violence that people like Tommy Robinson promote. And those attacking Jess Phillips, who I'm proud to call a colleague and a friend, not protecting victims. Jess Phillips has done 1,000 times more than they've even dreamt about when it comes to protecting victims of sexual abuse throughout her entire career. And so just as I took on the criminal justice system and the institutions when I was chief prosecutor, I'm prepared to call out this for what it is. We've seen this playbook many times, whipping up of intimidation and threats of violence, hoping that the media will amplify it. Now, Jess Phillips does not need me or anybody else to speak on her behalf. But when the poison of the far right leads to serious threats to Jess Phillips and others, then in my book, a line has been crossed. I enjoy the cut and thrust of politics, the robust debate that we must have, but that's got to be based on facts and truth, not on lies, not on those who are so desperate for attention that they're prepared to debase themselves and their country. So this government will get on with the job of protecting victims, including child sexual abuse, mandatory reporting, accelerating the processes. But what I won't tolerate is this discussion and debate based on lies without calling it out. What I won't tolerate is politicians jumping on the bandwagon simply to get attention, when those politicians sat in government for 14 long years, tweeting, talking, but not doing anything about it, now so desperate for attention that they're amplifying what the far right is saying. So that's what I say about Jess Phillips.